One of my goals as an adult has been to build an actual mini ramp in the backyard someday, and we did it.
I was a little hesitant about building a giant half pipe in our backyard at first, but now that it's there, it's actually really cool. Cullen plays on it all the time, and so far Jay hasn't broken anything, so we're all good.
This was definitely one of those times where I may have had to convince Jaimie that this project was a good idea, but I'm glad you like it. If you're watching this chronologically, right now, Jaimie is 5 months pregnant. So you don't see her as much carrying boards around and getting all up in the sawdust this time.
You know how we haven't made a video in 4 months? That's the reason why. Finally feeling good, and now we're back.
I had a pretty good idea of how they work and how to build them, but we did need to figure out, where are we gonna put it and how big is it gonna be and that kind of stuff.
So we looked at a bunch of inspiration online and drew up some plans, which you can get in the description below.
And remember, if you do like the video, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the little bell so you know when we're making stuff, all those things. Let's get to it.
So the mini ramp is going in the back corner of our backyard, and luckily we had this nice brick pad in the back that was just randomly there, so we were able to use that as a nice foundation for about half of the half pipe. For the rest of it, we dug holes in the other corners and put cement footings in there with some gravel underneath and use those for the foundation.
Now in a perfect world, the whole thing would just sit on a super flat, level concrete pad. But our yard is far from that, so we use the footings, like Jaimie said, to kind of get the four corners of it all kind of leveled out and even. And then in the other areas, we're going to use concrete pavers just kind of on top of the grass to support the weight.
The first thing we're building for the project are the transitions. These are the things on the side that help determine the curvature of the ramp. We're actually building 4 quarter pipes for this project, which meant we needed 8 plywood transition pieces.
The way you cut the curvature is you line up a couple of sheets and you basically determine a pivot point, and then we put a screw in there and we attach a piece of string that we cut to the same length of the radius of our curve, which for us was 6 feet. Then we attach a pencil to it, and then you just sort of draw a line that matches the curve that you want to use. We then measure and mark out the rest of the transition pieces, and we are going to get 2 of them from a single sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. We can then easily cut everything out with a jigsaw. We did that for 1 piece and then used that as a template to copy the same exact curve onto the rest of the boards.
With all 8 transition pieces cut, the next step was to trim up our 2x4s to frame out the quarter pipes.
So the ramp is exactly 12 feet wide, and it's broken up into 2 quarter pipes, one of which is exactly 8 feet and the other one's exactly 4 feet. So we basically had to mark and cut a whole bunch of 2x4s, and then we were able to begin framing them out.
So we chose the 8-foot and the 4-foot size because that was just the most efficient use of materials. The 2x4s are 8 feet long, so cut them in half. That gives us a nice 4-foot mini ramp on each side.
It's kind of wobbly, but we'll fix that. We'll take care of that. All right, this is a good milestone. We got 1 done. We need to do 3 more of these, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. And but this is cool. This is a great milestone.
To assemble these, you start with the 4 corners and you get it all squared up and screwed in, and then you take your 2x4s and you put them every 8 inches along the transition. Once we got our massive quarter pipes into roughly the place we wanted them to be, we bolted them together. Then we took a little bit of time and made sure that they were level and squared up, which was kind of hard, but we got there.
It's one of those projects where it's just so big that I was continually surprised when things weren't totally messed up. But once we got the quarter pipes exactly where they were going to go, we built the flatland kind of section in between them.
Luckily, everything fit and lined up. It was great. On the top corner of our quarter pipes is a notch, and in that notch we put a big metal pipe called the coping.
The pipe is 2-inch outer diameter, which is bigger than any of the local hardware stores carried, For us, we actually had to go to a metal supply store and special order the pipe. And then we had to drill like 1,000,000 holes in it to actually attach it to the quarter pipes.
Now, if you're going to be drilling holes in metal, it's better to use a nice, high-quality drill bit made for drilling metal. You can get away with the others, but it makes a terrible, like, sound, and it takes forever, and...
So we got the pipes, we got them custom cut to 12 feet a piece, and then we had to put holes every 2 feet or so to make sure that they were super secure. There's a hole on the front, which is 3/8 inch diameter, and that's big enough for the head of the drill. And then there's a hole on the back, which is 3/16, and that's big enough for the screw itself. So we basically got it all in place, kind of rotated it, screwed it all in, and went on like a charm.
Installing the plywood decking of the ramp is probably the only part of this project where you really need 2 people to help. So luckily my dad offered to help us.
You basically need 2 humans because one human has to put their weight onto the plywood to bend it to the transition, while a second human goes by and screws it all in. And that's probably the most common question we got, do you think, about through the whole build was how do you bend the plywood? And basically it's pretty easy because you get 3/8 inch plywood, which is really kind of bendy, and then you just push it into place and screw it in.
We used 2 layers of plywood, and each layer was offset from the one below it, just to make sure that all the screws didn't end up in the same place.
It definitely took us like a whole day, solid day, to get all the plywood down. It was pretty easy, it just took a while. And then like right towards the end of the day, it started to rain, which was not good. This was kind of the beginning of our rain adventure over the next week or 2.
So we threw a tarp over it. It mostly worked. Tarps are not watertight, waterproof for some reason.
We got some plywood damage the next day. We pulled the tarp off, kind of fixed the plywood as best we could, and then moved on to the final layer that goes on top.
So our original plan for the final layer was to use masonite. Now we know this is a really terrible outdoor material, but we were going to cover the whole thing in like a nice waterproof decking finish, and it was going to be fine.
It was going to be fine. Maybe.
But before we could get our beautiful waterproof finish on, it rained again.
Another surprise rain, by the way. We're actually pretty good planners, but it's like, oh, no rain for 5 days, and then it rains every day. It's like that kind of stuff.
So we covered it with a tarp, and we thought it was going to be okay, and then the next morning we took the tarp off.
It was not okay.
It was not, definitely not okay.
All the masonite was totally destroyed.
It was like waves of masonite.
I was so angry that I didn't film any of it. And we went back to the store and decided on a plan B, which was to put a hardwood bamboo, really thin 1/8 inch plywood on the top as the final layer.
The final layer of plywood goes on diagonally. This is so when you're riding over the ramp, you're not hitting a line like boom, boom. You're hitting like boom, boom, boom.
I mean, that's true though. That's exactly why. Because when the seams are diagonal, the 2 wheels never hit a seam at once. It's a more comfortable ride. It's a whole thing. But yeah.
So another thing we did, since this is an outdoor ramp, is we made sure there was a gap between each of the sheets. And this is to account for any expansion that happens when it's humid, so that way it doesn't do this, it just like comes together.
We live in Texas and the humidity changes by like 80% like every day. So we have to do stuff like that. Depending on where you live, might not be important, but having those little expansion gaps is usually a good idea.
So we learned our lesson from the masonite. Now when we put our final layer of plywood on, we left enough time to paint it.
We used an exterior house paint, and we actually used the gray that matches the same color as our house so that it would kind of fit in the yard a little bit better. And before the final layer of paint went on, we put a bead of caulking in all of the expansion joints.
The caulking's nice because it's flexible, so it still allows for a little bit of wood movement, but it stops all the rainwater from getting in and underneath and destroying all of our work. And it's nice because it's paintable. So after we did that layer of caulking, we painted the whole thing, and it was pretty much done.
The last part of our master plan was on the back of the ramp. We installed a climbing wall so that this little guy could climb up to the top and kind of like slide down and have fun.
And we found a used slide online for 10 bucks, so we put that on the back, and so now he has 2 slides.
I mean, multiple slides, skateboard ramp, climbing wall, greatest backyard ever. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a thing or two and you were inspired to go build your own backyard mini ramp. If you did, please consider subscribing. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
We have 2 layers of the 3/8 inch. We used 2.
Oh, we ripped one. You can't say that.
Why?